Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this live stream session today, where we will be talking about studying a course in arts design and architecture next year at DMU, or should I say this year, in just a few months. So thank you for joining us. Please do leave us a comment to say hello. We'd love to hear from you. And of course, leave your questions and we'll be answering those at the end of the session. So my name's Laura and I work in the student recruitment team for the Faculty of Arts, Design and Humanities, and I'm hosting today's session, and I'm joined by some of our lovely academic colleagues and current students. So let's just start off by all introducing ourselves. So Joe, could you please introduce yourself?
Certainly. Hello, my name's Jo Booth. Thanks again for joining us today. I'm Associate Head of School for Art, and I'm also the Associate Professor for Photography and Video here at De Montfort.
Great, thank you, Joe. And now you, Stuart.
Hello, I'm Stuart Wilson. I'm Associate Head of School and also Associate Professor for Product and Furniture Design, but I have something to do also with design crafts and interiors. And my professional background as a design consultant, maybe in furniture, but also some interiors as well.
Great, thank you, Stuart. And over to you, Kate.
Hi, my name's Cheyne. I'm the Head of School of Architecture, Art and Design for the school that sits within the faculty, and I am an architect as well.
Great, thank you, Kate. And now we have our two student ambassadors joining us today. So Cheyne, can you please introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, my name is Cheyne. I'm a third-year architecture student.
Thank you, Cheyne. And last but not least, Dylan.
Hi, my name is Dylan. I'm a postgraduate student in product design, and I've also graduated from DMU doing undergraduate in product design as well.
Great, thank you so much everyone for introducing yourself. So in today's session, we'll be hearing from the academics and students all about how their courses are going to be taught next year and the kind of blended learning approach. And we're also going to hear from our students about their experiences of online learning from March onwards. Like I mentioned, we will be answering your questions, so please do leave us a comment and we'll do our best to answer them at the end of the session. So just to kind of introduce Your DMU Future as a whole. I'm sure some of you now heard of this campaign that really wraps up everything to do with kind of your experience next year. So it's our way of connecting the safe campus living, the quality teaching, still getting one-to-one time with your academics, and just still having like a really great student experience all within our diverse and inclusive, welcoming DMU community. We really want to make sure you have everything you need to support you with your life, work and study, and that's what our academics are really going to kind of touch on today. So we're here for you every step of the way. It's been a very strange year for all of us, so this stream is really to kind of address any of those queries you might have. So we're just going to start with each academic kind of explaining a little bit about online learning in their areas. So Joe, could you please start us off by talking a little bit about the visual arts?
Certainly, yes, by all means. Thanks, Laura. And yeah, you're quite right. There's going to be quite a lot of questions that I'm sure you guys have got about next year. So I'm going to share with you some of the plans that we've got in place now for the courses that Laura mentioned. And those are, just to confirm, those are BA Honours Fine Art, the Foundation in Art and Design, and the BA Honours Photography and Video courses. I'm sure you've got loads of questions about how we plan to deliver the teaching and how we also ensure that you will still have a great time at DMU, even though we are still living through these extraordinary times. So I'm going to explain a little bit about some of the practical plans that we've got in place for you for next year. Firstly, of course, the most important thing is to make sure that we all, you and all of the staff and everybody else that is involved in your education stays safe whilst you are here for your studies. So this means we need, of course, to ensure that the social distancing is observed in all our teaching spaces and all our studio spaces. And as you would, as you will anticipate, and as you will know, we've got a number of bespoke areas in the School of Art, mainly the studio spaces and the workshop areas, but also the Mac suites, the photography and video studios, the sound studio, and the editing facilities, as well as the dark room, of course. So the first thing to mention is that our planning, the planning that we've been doing for several weeks now, allows for students to maintain excellent access, I would say, now to staff and to facilities, but in a way that is completely safe and social distanced. So our plan is for an approach that includes some on-site and some off-site teaching. That's the blended learning that Laura just mentioned then. So we've reduced the actual physical capacity, the amount of people that will be in the spaces at all times. So there'll be less people on site at any one time. And of course, that means that there's less risks, and it means that we can maintain the social distancing. So we've timetabled access to all of the spaces within the School of Visual Arts. So, for example, the students that are studying fine art and foundation with us will continue to have access to the studio accommodation, as you would expect, and that will look exactly the same as it does normally. They'll have their own spaces, and the way that we'll manage the social distancing will be that there'll be different days for different year groups. So, for example, when you come in, when you start in your first year, you'll be on site and working in your area for a pre-arranged number of days and a specific number of days and specific days of the week each week. And whilst you're on site, you'll be able to access our brilliant workshop facilities, which some of you may have seen in person, or some of you may have just heard about, but they're quite impressive. I'm sure you'll agree if you have seen them. And they're areas in plaster, print, wood, and metal, and you'll be able to access those in timetable times, obviously to ensure fair access for everybody. But outside those timetable times, the workshops will be bookable, and again, they'll be observing the social distancing guidance as you'd expect. Similar arrangements have been made for photography and video, and we've got priority times allotted to different year groups for the studios and for the other technical areas. And again, around those timetabled slots, you'll be able to book your spaces independently using our online booking form. So that's a little bit about how you actually, kind of how your week might look. But of course, we've got some remote teaching within that as well, and that'll be arranged. Even though you'll be accessing your classes virtually, they will be arranged in a kind of traditional model, so that there will be a mix of group teaching, large group teaching, small group teaching, seminar tutorials, and one-to-one tutorials as well. So you'll get great access. We'll maintain that great access to your lecturers whilst you're on site, and also while you're working virtually from the comfort of your own home. One other thing to mention is that the briefs will largely remain the same. Some submissions will be taking place digitally, and sometimes some briefs will be submitted traditionally, physically, as it were, and that'll vary according to the requirements of each of the modules. And then, as you may already know, the library has got a whole suite of fantastic arrangements to make sure that you can get access to the resources that you need, a great package of online resources and facilities, and they'll also teach you how to use the programs that you'll need to become familiar with to access those virtual resources. So we're talking about programs such as Blackboard, Collaborate, and Microsoft Teams, for example. It's likely that the written components of your courses, so maybe the historical and critical modules, will take place remotely, whereas the actual making and doing the workshop and technical areas will require you to be on site. So we're confident now that we've arranged a schedule to make sure that you'll receive quality teaching every day, every week of your study. Sometimes it'll be online, and sometimes it'll be in person, and it'll be a mix of group and one-to-one work. And of course, there'll be a range of activities planned for your induction week as well. So we're very confident that the experience that you will gain from being a student at DMU will be maintained and as rewarding and exciting as you would hope any first year of study would be. So that's it from me. Thanks, Laura.
Great, thank you so much for that, Jo. That was definitely really reassuring to hear that you've got such a comprehensive plan in place for those visual arts subjects. Stuart, I'm sure the same is it's the same case for design. So could you please just tell us a little bit about how the blended learning for next year for design?
Sure. So I'm covering product design, interior design, and design crafts. We're all actually based on the same floor. We're all very heavy users of the studio. We use the workshops a great deal and the CAD labs. And so we've worked out a really good pulsing phasing of access between us, so that each year group in each subject has really good access to the whole of the floor when they're in, and also to the workshops below at other times as well. So in product design and interiors and craft, we're taking different approaches, but they all have the same goal, which is to give you meaningful and useful access to the facilities whilst keeping you safe. We're also really enriching the teaching through the opportunities that online teaching presents. So in product, for instance, the year one students will have weekly access to campus. And this will be the same actually in the second and third years. And we'll do this through our CAD teaching. So that isn't just learning to use software. CAD, 3D CAD, 2D is an important part of what we do. So those sessions will continue on site. And we're going to use that as a hub, a data point in each week where you can have taught lessons, but also then go and use the other facilities, the studios. And also as part of that, we'll integrate you with accessing the workshops as well. So as I said, we're enhancing the curriculum. We're not just putting everything online. There will be lectures that are pre-recorded, but as much as possible, we're going to be conducting online discussions, workshops, we would call them, seminars. Many of the demonstrations that you would have had in studios are now being recorded currently and will be available to watch and re-watch for your project work as well. And there'll also be visiting lecturers coming in and giving you lunchtime lectures. And again, you can watch them later on if you're too busy. So we're really keen that the opportunity that online provides is really enriching and fun for everybody, and that the opportunities for accessing the studios and the workshops are really meaningful. So yeah, the students will have access to the workshops in some weeks and still benefit from having £200 free materials, which they can spend on, £200 cash and also free materials for spending on printing and the like. And interiors will take a similar approach. They're more phasing it in blocks. So their year one will have lots of access in the first week, and then they'll have a week online, and then the third week they'll have more face-to-face teaching as well. And so they're doing all sorts of innovative things, using social media to create communities, which is important to all of us. For instance, they're setting up mentoring bubbles or houses in which groups of students outside of their teaching from all 3 year groups will be together and can provide additional support, mentoring, companionship on top of the teaching activity that will take place. And so the students, rather like in product, will also have access to the workshops. They're going to be taught in blocks so they can have inductions, and they'll enjoy the same free materials and cash benefits as well for making models and things later in the year. Usually the workshops are accessible all the time, pretty much, apart from when there's inductions. But because of the restrictions, we're having to order that a great deal more. But that doesn't mean you're going to get significantly less. We're timing the access to the workshops in interiors and products for times when you really need to develop ideas and also when you need to visualize them at the end. So it'll be more controlled, but you still will have that access. So in design crafts, which as you probably realize is very much focused in workshops, they have probably one of the best situations in the faculty, in that they use workshops that no one else really has access to. And so for the period of the whole year, design crafts will have sole access to ceramics, hot glass, jewelry, metalworking, and that kind of thing, which gives them some really good flexibility that is absolutely vital for their work. So there are going to be face-to-face studio sessions that are planned in blocks. So for the first year, for instance, you're going to have 2 blocks, and just we talk about the first term in the first term, where no one else is in the workshops. You're intensively learning new skills and learning about materials. You're developing ideas. So these workshop sessions are going to run in parallel to also access to the studios and the discussions that you have with your peers and staff in those studios. And also that will dovetail together in terms of intense online tutorials and seminars, which rather than just doing, there'll be a lot of thinking and experimentation through these discussions. So I said the craft students have got sole access to these workshops, and these blocks should give them real opportunity to get stuck in. because usually the workshop access is pretty much open to all at any time. And now, as I've said, we're making this more formal, more organised. There'll be far fewer students because of distancing in those workshops, which will also mean you'll get even better access to the technicians who are subject specialists, material specialists. And so it'll be very valuable in an intense period. And then you intersperse that with opportunities for thinking and sketchbook development, visual research. It'll be a really valuable and enjoyable learning experience. And the online teaching, like the other areas I mentioned, won't just be tutorials. There'll be pre-recorded lectures, of course, but there'll also be demonstrations, rather like in product, where there'll be model making, marker rendering, sketching. In craft, there'll be making presentations from technicians, but also visiting designer makers, and who'll record videos and give lunchtime talks as well. So all of us are reappraising and revisiting how we assess and what we're asking you to do. And very much, I think, it's the same in interiors and product. The reliance on CAD, we're pushing back against that a little bit. So more the use of analog techniques of drawing and various other things will be just as acceptable. So we're very understanding of people's situation. For instance, perhaps they're not coming in as much because they're shielding or whatever, but they're still studying. So you shouldn't be concerned with the restrictions. You should focus on the opportunities, which really are great. And the staff, I must say, after many weeks of work, are very happy with the offer we're making. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you for that really comprehensive cover, Stuart, of just all things relating to design. As same as Joe mentioned, it's really great to hear that kind of prioritised access for workshops and how that's not going to be detrimental to people's access. So next, I just wanted to come to Kate, talk a little bit about architecture, please.
Hi there. Before I get into nitty gritty, I just wanted to kind of pull back a little bit, and as a head of school, and just say I'm really looking forward to all of you coming and taking that brave step of coming to university. But I'm just going to say, it is not a normal year to come, so let's not pretend that. However, we are from the creative arts, we're from design disciplines and the creative industries, and if we can't find innovative and at times better ways of educating you and involving you in the future professions you're choosing, then I would suggest that you might want to choose a different educational model. So I am absolutely convinced that we're going to find a really engaged way of teaching you next year, because things weren't always good in the past across the whole of the university structures. And this is a chance for us to have rethought it. And we're bringing in some really interesting and innovative ways of working with you. And if I look at you specifically about architecture and the built environment sector, the construction industry has been challenged to change anyway because of the climate emergency. And architectural education has been challenged to work with practice and with students to find those changes. So we really can be part of the change makers because of climate emergencies. And things like saying to you that we're going to do an educational form that involves much more live practice and much more situated practice is one of those ways that we say that we will collaborate with you to be the change makers of the future. So the reality of that is we're talking about how we can still teach you both the active learning, but also the passive learning, where you can actually absorb the new information that you're being given. And that kind of varies from lecture-based learning to seminar learning to tailored individual learning. And we often call this the difference between an individual tailored learning and a collective group learning. And this very, very much mimics practice within the built environment. You will very rarely be working as an individual when you go into the construction industry. You always work across disciplines, across practices, and across ways of thinking. So you will have, doesn't matter whether you're a quantity surveyor, an architectural technologist, or an architectural designer, you're using three different aspects of your brain. You're using the side which is humanities and social sciences. You're using the side which is creative practice, arts, visual arts, form designally thinking, and you're using the science-based engineering part of your brain. And that's one of the most exciting things about going into the construction industry, is how you knit those together, but how you knit them together with all the other professions that you're working with. And an education that we're setting up for you is going to allow you to do that, partly by how you cross over with other students, partly because we're going to be doing live projects out in Leicester so that they're intensely local, so you'll be working with real world situations, and partly because the people that teach you come from not only academia but also practice, and many of them are part-time lecturers, so they're still in practice. And so that's why we're very, very aware that what we're going to be doing with you and the way that we're going to be working is absolutely mimicking what practitioners are finding they're having to do. So this talking to you through a screen is becoming normal within the construction industry. So we're not going to throw you out into the world at the end of 3 years to a completely different world, because we're all doing this in the same way at the same point in time. The thing that's exciting about what we're going to do is we're calling it kind of like a pulse education. So we're going to have these weeks of highly intense, active, collective, group ways of thinking. And then we're going to pull back into more either much more small and tailored meetings through the computer screen. We've learned over the last few months that individual tutorials still work well through a computer. And we'll do the very big lectures, because again, a big lecture can sometimes be quite intimidating in a lecture theatre, and having it on a computer screen that you can listen to again and again at home might turn out to be a much better educational model for you. And then we'll have these points of the seminars, which will essentially both be live, face-to-face on site, and also in the computer. So there'll be a bit of choosing which one starts to work best for you, but it's always going to be around discourse and questioning and answering the discipline questions. I think that there's sort of certain things around that as well, that if we're talking about this pulse, which is essentially a year group coming in intensely for a full week every day for every third week, the other weeks are not only alone. We're going to be meeting you out in Leicester in your sites, which are going to be real world sites, with clients that are going to be real world clients, so that you'll be meeting off campus as much as you're meeting on campus. So we're going to call this field work. It's not new to architecture. It's not new to architectural education. It's very common. So you'll still be very much learning through doing, and it's going to be incredibly hands-on. And again, that's one of the exciting things about architectural and the built environment education, is that you learn through doing as well as learning through thinking. So a building surveyor will be starting to understand how you measure space and place. And an architect will be doing that, but then how you start to impact that space and create a new space or placemaking situation for people. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really exciting time for all of us. And I think actually it's going to bring both the industry and education very close together, because we really are going to be needing to tackle the big, big problems around climate emergency and global pandemics. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much for that, Kate. It's really reassuring again to just hear you all talk about the blended learning and that kind of pulse teaching. And Kate, you just then touched about how quickly everyone has had to adapt to this different circumstance. So I really want to turn to the students now, because obviously they also had to adapt quickly back in March when things very quickly moved online, and there was a kind of very sudden shift in their learning experience. So Cheyne, could I just come to you first, please, about your experience of online learning at the end of last year?
Yeah, so when everything's happened in March, I was in my final year of my undergraduate architecture. So at first it was very it's a very different situations. We were quite kind of confused what to do next, but then we feel very reassured, because the lecturers and the professor and the head of school, everyone's were emailing us, explaining the situations and everything. So although it happened, we feel very assured, and we feel like everything's will be okay, because they're very reassuring. They're checking on us every day with the email, how we're doing and everything. In terms of online learning as well, because DMU have a very good blackboard system, it was since before this online learning happened, we've been using it. So it was quite easy for us to adapt to that online learning, because we can and then we can just log into our collaborate system, and we can talk to our classmates and also the lecturers and everyone. And also I'm going to say that it's the way that they organized was very convenient for us as well, because there was a online classroom system where everyone can come and talk and discuss about everything. And then there's the individual tutorial group, so we can meet our own tutors and then our classmates from our own group. And also they also arrange a one-to-one tutorial where we can go log into our time slot, and then we can have one-to-one tutorial with our tutor as well. So it just we're communicating with online, but we just feel the same, because it's very convenient to adapt to into those situations. We stay getting all the information that we needed and everything. And even my tutor, one of my studio tutor, she created a WhatsApp group for us so that we can communicate each other at any time of the week if we need some help. So we can help to each other if we need any help like that. And also in terms of the software, because I understand a lot of students are very worried about how they're going to use software and stuff. So at the time, everyone's were really useful. So we can like, for example, 3D modeling software like SketchUp and also like Photoshop, they all have access for students, so we can log in and download on our own laptop, and then we can do works and everything. And also some of the students are worried about how they're going to talk to the lecturers because they can't go to the campus anymore. But then again, even on the online system, they always have a one of two tutors around that you can talk to. They're going to email you what time they will be around, and then even if you don't have tutorial, you can always go talk to them with your issues and everything. They were very understanding. They listened to everything, and then they came up with the best solution for us. So it was very I'm gonna say it's very convenient, and it was okay to do this. And also in my own experience, for me, I didn't know what to do because I needed a lot of support in terms of tutorials and also the software and everything. And DMU was really supportive. So one of the all have access to all the software. So for me, I didn't have a good laptop to use the software and everything. So I talked to my tutor. I don't have a capability to work on the software and everything. So DMU sent me a brand new laptop so I can work on the software, download the software, and do my project very happily at home. And so yeah, that kind of help and everything. I don't feel like I'm alone at home. Everyone was there. I can talk to my classmate and my tutor on my WhatsApp or one. So I'm gonna say it was, because it never happened before, it was a bit confusing at first, but then it goes really well, and I'm very happy with what I had experienced. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much for that, Cheyne. Again, it's really nice to hear that you had a really positive experience, especially when obviously no one was expecting that kind of sudden shift, because it definitely all came around very quickly. And in September and October, we've got a very thorough plan in place. So it's great to hear that you also had a great experience when things were a lot more sudden. Dylan, could you please just share a little bit about your online learning experience at the end of last year?
Yeah, of course. So my experience of virtual learning, I'd say, has been really interesting and engaging to begin with. I'd say in some respects, students and potential students for the next academic year, so upcoming in September, they do have the advantage of knowing what to expect to an extent. Whereas one thing that, like you touched on, was that we were definitely all caught a bit off guard by this, and the initial shock was kind of very much a shock to the system. But fortunately, DMU made it so much more accommodating to just adjust and settle in that initial time when we were moving to remote learning. The initial major change for us was, of course, virtual lectures and virtual tutorials, which actually worked really well from the onset, and it was so engaging. And it created a whole new dynamic to lectures as well, which I don't think any other generation of students would ever experience, which is in itself really exciting to know that you're a part of something that's very different and completely new to the whole world of education, I'd say. It's definitely like nothing I've ever experienced before. And the same thing goes for virtual tutorials as well. It again wasn't really, when you think about it, it's not a dramatic difference, because it was still a one-to-one slot with an allocated time that you'd have with just you and your tutor, or sometimes with multiple tutors. And you still had kind of those little things which made a huge difference. So you'd be able to share your screen, you could share files, so you could still talk through things that you would do normally in a face-to-face tutorial, but still just from the comfort of your own home. And those kind of little features made it so much easier and so much more accommodating when you're especially getting thrown to an extent in the deep end. And now that things have leveled out, it becomes really, really systematic. And especially throughout the summer, like all the academics have touched on, they're really meticulously planning everything and carefully coordinating how the uni would work in a blended learning kind of environment. And those kind of characteristics would definitely come into play in September, I'd say. But especially as well as the fact that the tutors and the staff have been really empathetic of the situation, especially as a student. It's of course like nothing we've ever experienced. So it's been really kind of reassuring that in a time of uncertainty, the unis have really strong aspects which are carried through the entire time. And obviously I hope and still that all of that kind of comes together in September. I'd say as well, one thing that people might be concerned about, which is definitely something that I was actually concerned about initially when we moved to virtual learning, was being able to contact academics and tutors. Because obviously with the nature of design and any creative courses, really, it relies quite heavily on a kind of being able to just speak to people and being able to quickly bounce ideas around. And obviously that's going to be restricted to an extent when I moved into virtual learning. But it was and it wasn't, because you then started to just kind of adjust, and it became a lot more natural because it was just a case of pinging across an email and just having even a 5-minute chat where you could just jump in with a tutor and just quickly bounce off an idea when they had a chance. Other times it'd be, well, what's your thoughts on this? And then they'd send you back a link to a file or maybe just something that they had in mind. And then you can then discuss about it again when you actually have your scheduled tutorial. So it really is very much a case where some things become really ad hoc, which is really nice to know that you still have that kind of freedom. But other times the kind of scheduling and stuff really helps cement that strong working ethic, I think, as well. Another thing would be to do with able to collaborate with students. So once again, with creative courses, you tend to have a very high studio culture where you're sat in a studio and you're kind of engaging with other students. People are looking at your screens to see what you're working on. You can get ideas, get opinions on your work, and stuff like that still has carried through for me. And obviously I've been, for the past couple of months, been in uni, but whilst uni's been closed, so it's all been virtual. And if that's been able to carry on for me, then it's quite reassuring to know that going forward into a blended environment coming September, that those will still be able to carry through, because you'll still be able to interact with students, obviously with any distancing measures in place. But for me, I'd say that one of the things that allowed us to collaborate with students is just through social media. So just being able to take that initiative and speak to other students and ask their ideas outside of times where you're scheduled to have tutorials, because sometimes one-to-one tutorials can be a bit, if you need people to bounce ideas off, if you need more voices being heard, then you're able to just kind of reach out to students. And even though you'll be new, it's still kind of one of those things that DMU is facilitating through different aspects of social media, that you'll be able to create almost a community, like the academics have mentioned, about how you can interact with students and still have that same experience, but just with a completely new, enriched kind of way of learning. I'd say those were kind of the key points for me, especially moving into virtual learning and online learning to an extent. And I hope that's answered any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Dylan. It's really nice to hear about the kind of academic community and how you still felt you could collaborate with both academics and peers, even though it was online. So I think, like you mentioned, with this blended approach where people will still meet in person, I think that collaboration will be even easier. So for anyone watching, please do leave any questions you might have for anyone on the stream today. We are going to turn to some of our questions now. So the first one we have is someone wants to know where they can, will I be able to ask questions and get the help I need if I'm stuck? So who wants to kind of chip in on this one? Yeah, Dylan?
I'd say from a student perspective, obviously I can't speak on behalf of every faculty and everything, but just from my experience, what I found was that in some cases it varies from day to day, but when you know that you're working on a specific module, so when you're balancing different modules, I found that I'd be able to contact a tutor, and because they're aware of the situation, they know everything that's happening, they'd be able to respond and be like, okay, I've got a slot at 3 in the afternoon. If you're around, just jump onto Blackboard and we can quickly have a chat about this. And I think that's the major difference, that it becomes, yes, of course, you can't just necessarily walk up to a tutor and ask them a quick question or anything like that. But that kind of ability to just quickly pop a question in or mention something at the end of a lecture, and even with the chat functions that you have in lectures and things with virtual lectures, just little things like that mean that the kind of restrictions that students might feel like they have are definitely eliminated, because you still have the ability just to pop a quick question in an email or put something in at the end of a lecture and still get that response.
Great, thank you, Dylan. Yeah, Kate, did you want to talk about it from an academic perspective?
I'm really pleased to hear a student response, because I think it was one of the things we were always concerned about moving online, is that would something happen by no longer being able to walk down a corridor and ask a question of a tutor or of a peer. And I think everyone has shown their innovation in finding other ways of talking with each other so that you can still keep a community online. And that's one of the things we're really talking about a lot over the summer, is how to put in place both an online and real world community, especially for you guys who all don't know each other yet. So we're thinking a lot about that, and we're looking at lots of different platforms for doing that as well. But there's, we have all learned that online you can quite often get hold of people that you wouldn't otherwise have got hold of. So sometimes you find other voices can come in and help and answer questions. And I think the one thing I did want to say, especially to first year students, is that there's no such thing as a stupid question. You probably got told this in school, but it is really true, is that I would always say, ask a question, don't hide. And that can be in front of your peers as well. Everyone else is going to be sitting there thinking, I can't ask that question. You can ask that question, and everyone learns from having that question answered. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that, Kate. If no one else wants to chip in on this question, we have a comment come in from someone watching. So Nadisha has asked kind of about the job opportunities. I'm not sure which specific subject this is addressing, but kind of the job opportunities for someone who puts in all this time and gets a degree in a creative subject. Like, what sort of outcomes can they expect? So I'm not sure who wants to touch on this first. Stuart?
I'd say that obviously the economy is in turmoil at the moment, but it's a V-shaped recession, which means a steep decline and a steep rise. And a lot of businesses are struggling with their surviving. So your generation will experience changes that others haven't, but we've had plenty of recessions and difficulties in the past before. But I think what you have to understand is that for, let's say, products and interiors, for instance, we're very much focused on you getting a job. In terms of the graduate surveys, we've had 100% employability the last few years. And so even though it's much more than a technical training, it's university experience is much more in the round than that. We're very much focused on you getting a job at the end of it. And design crafts, for instance, the majority of students within that subject are focused on becoming designer makers. So a big part of the course is, as well as building a narrative for yourself and learning craft skills about materials, it's also about learning business skills and knowing how to promote yourself. So all the courses focus on this a great deal, but they're also arming you with a skill set that you need to make you valuable to somebody else in the industry. So you get out what you put in. That is true in most things in life. But I think one of the most important things is to jump in with both feet and get involved in many other things as well, so your CV is enriched. You have features above getting a great first-class degree, and that readiness is really valued by employers, because they're also deciding when they want to work with you, and as well as looking at your work. So I think, yes, you will get what you put in, and we will help you to become highly employable. You just have to engage and be enthusiastic.
Great, I definitely agree. Thank you for that, Stuart. I don't know if anyone else wants to chip in a little bit about employability in their subject area. Yeah, Joe?
Yeah, I would agree with everything that Stuart's just said. On our courses, there's quite a lot of live briefs, so you get the opportunity to go out and do some work with a real client as well. But also that thing about, I mean, apart from the fact that the creative industries are massive employers in their own right, there's huge amounts of opportunities right across the piece. But one of the things that you get definitely from the opportunity of studying art and design subjects at HE level is just what we were talking about before, the importance of collaboration, of working together, of building your own networks, of getting to know people. So it's kind of one of those kind of things that when you get the opportunity to work at that level, what an employer is often looking for is what you might typically develop as an undergraduate and come out with the type of graduate skills that you have once you've completed a course, which are things about being able to work in a team and how to solve problems, how to identify problems and then solve them as well, and having the sufficient self-confidence to be able to take yourself forward in the world in whatever direction you wish to go, which is likely obviously to be related to the subject that you've just studied, but not necessarily. It could be a parallel area. It could it could be something that's related. So you never really know which direction you're going to be. There's often opportunities that come that we weren't expecting, weren't there, in every walk of life. So I think one of the things that this level of study definitely gives you is the ability to see opportunities, the confidence to seize opportunities, and the knowledge to be able to move those forward. That's all I wanted to say in respect to that.
Great, thank you for that, Jo. We've had a few more comments come in recently, people asking some questions. So the next one we have is someone saying, I am into architecture and sustainability. Can we use labs and try new designs with the help of staff? So this might be one for you, Kate, and maybe Cheyne, if you wanted to chip in afterwards as well.
Yes, of course. So we've worked out the workshop across the whole of the faculty to ensure that every programme still has access to the workshop. I think Stuart talked about some particular, very specific workshops for design and crafts, but there still are core workshops, which are timber, plastics, digital workshops, wood, which the architecture students also have access to. So one of the things about architecture is, as I said before, it is about learning through doing. So that's not only drawing, that's also making. And sometimes the making is the scale of really careful paper card models. And sometimes it's the scale of understanding how 3 bits of material will go together to make joints. And you'll be involved in all of that. So in first year, it'll stay more within the scale of, it could sometimes actually be your home or on site. It's less about the materials, and it's more about the construction of them to form space. But as you go up into second and third year, you'll do more and more, which is very much about learning how to build even at 1-to-1. And the same is true as architectural technology, and the building surveyors and quantity surveyors are going to be more dealing with drones and surveying equipment. So you will be making, definitely. I could also add that some of the tutors studied carpentry and joinery and metalwork before they became architects. So you've got some very, very competent tutors.
Great, thank you for that, Kate. Cheyne, I don't know if you just kind of wanted to touch a little bit on the kind of support you got in workshops when you were trying new things throughout the course of your degree.
Yes, so before the university course start as well, we have the immersion week where we can go around the workshops and then they explain how to use them and how to use them safely. But even after that, after we've learned that, whenever I go to workshop to do something, to create design, there are always technicians around. So it's really, really helpful, because sometimes I just got confused and I don't know what to do next. Now I'm going to go ask the question, how to do the laser cutting, or how should I cut this wood, and stuff like that. And they will show you, and they're very patient as well, because they get that kinds of questions every day. So they explain you how to do in step by step, and then they sometimes help you to do your work and everything. And also I was really curious about how I can use different materials. So if, for example, in our first year as well, we had this project where we can model with different kinds of materials. There were lots of material, including wood, paper, metal, wax, and everything. So there are different workshops for different facility and at DMU, which is great. So I always go into the different workshop, try new materials, so that I can find which material works best for my design. And their technicians and instructors are always around. They are more than happy to help you with any kinds of questions that you have whenever you want to create design. So I'm going to say yes, we can use materials and workshop to create new design, and with a lot of support. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that contribution, Cheyne. So we've had quite a few questions come in, so if we don't have time to answer them on the stream, then please be reassured we will be typing a comment reply to you as well. So another question we've had come in is someone asking about the Art and Design Foundation course. So this is a question for you, Jo, that just kind of, it seems to be wanting a little bit of an overview about the kind of content of the course. If you could just touch on that for us, please.
Yes, certainly. So the foundation course is quite an exciting dynamic and quite, well, it's a very busy year. So you basically have an opportunity to try several different discipline areas, such as fine art, fashion. You get a photography and video stream, and more of a kind of design and making stream as well. And you rotate around the different workshops. The aim of the foundation course overall is to give you an overview of the different opportunities that you've got within the field of art and design, and give you a taster opportunity to see what each of them kind of entails. And the beauty of doing a foundation at a place like DMU is that you're able to use the same workshop facilities that all of the HE courses, all the higher education courses, the degree courses use. So you're working with very good facilities and very good workshops, and you get a really good sense of what you can expect at the next stage of your educational career, and a good benchmark. I mean, hopefully we have quite a lot of people that do stay with us to continue their education and to move on from the foundation and onto the degree courses. But if that's not something that you want to do, then the foundation at De Montfort gives you a really good taster of what to expect within higher education for art and design. So basically it's quite high intensity teaching. There's a lot of input, and there's a lot of different subject areas that you rotate around and get to just have a go. It's a very exciting and kind of dynamic course. I think, in fact, when I look back at my own career, the foundation course was one of the most exciting and memorable parts of the time that I've spent in further and higher education.
Great, thank you for that, Jo. Hopefully that's reassuring to that student wanting to know a little bit more about the foundation course. So we've had another question come in, someone wanting to know, I guess this applies for all of you, is there anything I can do over the summer to prepare for studying the course? So I don't know who wants to chip in first here. Yeah, Kate?
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing what the students say, having just more recently been through it and the things that they wish they'd done on a summer before coming to university. But I think my biggest thing would be to say is to draw and to look carefully. We can give you thousands of reading lists, and we can say to look at certain kind of practice-based magazines and things online, and there's lots and lots of webinars online that you can easily listen to. But actually the biggest thing I'd say do is get yourself some brilliant pens and pencils that you actually like to hold, and to really start to kind of engage with that eye-hand coordination. That is your key to success. It's the ability to use that. So just take sketchbooks or bits of paper, try anything. You can throw them in the bin at the end of the summer if you don't like them, but just draw everything.
Great, thank you for that, Kate. Stuart, did you want to talk a little bit about what design students can do in preparation?
I'd say drawing absolutely is the main thing. I think perhaps you've come to design through real fascination and love for the subject, and you've maybe been slightly exhausted by your exams, and perhaps you haven't done any drawing or consuming of design since then. So I think, as well as drawing and observing and really seeing the detail and the truth and things, you've got to also find some stuff that you love, new stuff. So I think reading, going to exhibitions if you can, certainly going online, find new design that really piques your interest and stimulates your interest, so that when you arrive, you're not just drawing freely, you're also turning things upside down, looking at how they're made, taking photos of beautiful surfaces, that you're really already you're going to hit the ground running, essentially. I think starting a new course is always, as overwhelming as at times as it is wonderfully exciting. So what you don't want to do is to doubt your interest by leaving everything until week one. So if I ask you, how's it going? What have you done recently that interests you? You should just be able to spill out loads of fascinating stuff. I can't think of anything because I haven't looked at it for 6 months, which is to some extent what a lot of people do because they're busy and they've been getting on with other stuff. But I think in a very deliberate way, you need to draw every day, like Kate says, and that takes an effort. But it's got to become natural and got to become a tool for your ideas as well as a task. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Great, thank you, Stuart. That's really helpful. Jo, did you want to talk a little bit about this as well?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, absolutely drawing, but also taking photographs and making little movies, and just keeping going. But you know, in and amongst all of that stuff, have fun, experiment and play and see what works and see what you like about what it is that you've done, and then follow up on the things that you think are successful. And don't be afraid to make mistakes, and don't be afraid to get things wrong. There is no real right or wrong. It's just all a big process of experimentation. So just have some fun, have a really good play, do your drawings, photograph your drawings, print out your drawings on your printer and your photographs, make collages, make all sorts of different make little sculptures out of them. So just play and enjoy, and definitely, if you possibly can, look at exhibitions, either visit exhibitions and look at books, of course. So I want you to just constantly think about how you get that inspiration for your work. Look at other great works, look at other things that really excite you and really make you want to produce work that you find inspiring. But one of the things that I've been really enjoying, and yes, like Kate said, the webinars definitely, but also the virtual exhibitions that a lot of museums and galleries are arranging now. So you can even think about the way that the work is shown to you as a virtual visitor, but also about the way that the work is paired and organized. So think about what piece of work is being hung next to what other piece of work, and how it's all displayed. So you're thinking about the exhibition as a kind of product in a way, and how that product is presented to the viewer. That's always quite an interesting one, because the curator organises and mediates the work for the audience. So that's quite an interesting thing to do as well.
Great, thank you for that helpful advice, Jo. I hadn't thought about checking out the online exhibitions, but I'm sure they're really interesting when you can't currently go to a gallery at the moment. Cheyne, I think I saw your hand up, did you have something else, some tips, your own personal tips about what people can do to prepare?
Yes, I just wanted to mention, according to my experience, because apparently I was an international student before I moved into UK. So I just wanted to say, to prepare the best for the course is make sure where to get help before you come to uni. So for example, I spent a lot of time before I came to uni. I spent a lot of time where I can get help within my area, course area, and also university-wide. So for example, I looked around and on the website, and I got information like, oh, I can get help from my personal tutor, and also from the student advice centers within the faculty. And also I looked at what if I'm stuck with essays and everything, and then I had a look at the library help support team, class team, and everything. So when I got to uni, and then when I facing some issues, it was really easy for me, because I wasn't busy looking for help. I know where to go exactly, and it would save a lot of time, and it makes my life a lot easier. So I would say best way to prepare before you come to uni, and to prepare for your course, like just to make some research on where you can get help and support.
Yeah, that's a really good point, saying there's definitely ways that students might need support kind of outside the academic side of things as well. So like you say, kind of preparing and knowing where those resources are ahead of time is definitely really useful. So we have another question, maybe for you, Kate, about architecture. So Rob has asked, with regards to the CAD software used by the architecture students, is this something I should be competent with before starting, or something that is taught?
No, you're coming to university for us to teach you that, so you don't have to worry about that at all. If there was anything that I'd say that you could start playing around with, it would be Photoshop, InDesign and Illustrator, because you don't need to, certainly in architecture, you don't need to know such industry standardized ways of doing it, but being able to play with that would actually kind of quite help you. So I'd suggest that's the only thing I would play with. CAD is also something, it's just another tool. It's not the only tool. And in first year across the whole of the UK and globally as well, quite often you won't be asked to be drawing in CAD until right at the end of first year or moving into second year, because we want you really to kind of to learn to design before the computer starts to take control. So no, you don't need to know CAD at this point.
Great, thank you for that, Kate. That definitely sounds reassuring to know that, yeah, you, like you say, you're coming to learn, you're not expected to be kind of a master ahead of time. So we've got, I think we're really running out of time, but it's just one more question I wanted to flag to all of you. Not sure if you can answer this one, but can art students just kind of use any of the facilities available in the building that aren't related to their course? So I know you were saying, obviously, there's a different way that workshops are working now, where you're really trying to make sure people on set courses have access to what they need. So I don't know if you could just help out this student with this question, anyone? Yeah, Stuart?
Within reason, yes. In a normal year, before this year, if you wanted to go and if you're in product, say, and you wanted to go and get some fabric sewn, you wouldn't be able to just waltz in there and demand to have it done, because you wouldn't have been inducted into that area. But you can approach the technicians and ask for their advice and help. The same thing within ceramics or 3D printing, if that's outside of your area. This year, it's obviously going to be not more difficult, but there'll be less opportunities to do that. But it's about approaching it in the right way. If you do it in good time and you have a drawing and a clear understanding of what you're trying to achieve, then technicians will respond really well to that. Turning up at the last minute with a veiled explanation about what you need and it's not your area, you're less likely to get a really good result. So I think, as someone mentioned earlier on, you know, even though you're at college, it's a little bit like training for the workplace, and having good relationships with technicians and lecturers and your colleagues, your fellow students, is a really big part of that. So asking for things to be done in a direct but humble way, and being patient is a really good experience to learn from. So I'd say it's going to be less easy than it has been in the past. But I'd always talk to your lecturers, because there may be other ways of doing it that don't necessarily require a different material. Often we're just prototyping and representing materials in different ways.
Great, thank you for that, Stuart. That's really helpful to know. We are nearly out of time now, so if anyone has asked a question that we haven't got to yet, then please know we will be typing a reply to you if maybe you have something a little bit more specific. But thank you all so much for tuning in today. It's been a really good conversation and hopefully reassured a lot of you about your learning experience next year. So again, thank you for your comments and questions. You can find out more information about your DMU future on the website. We'd love for you to join our exciting community event that's actually happening tomorrow, Friday the 24th of July, for all offer holders. It's called Our Big Night In. So please go to our website and you can book your place onto the event. So there's now a banner on the screen with the link for any of you who are interested in that. So thank you all for watching, and we hope to see you in September. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.